In an age before the formation of the Old Republic, over 36,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, 8 large, triangular ships spread throughout the galaxy in search of Force sensitives, visiting worlds like Ando Prime, Kashyyyk, Dathomir, Ryloth, and Manon. Establishing a connection with many of the beings on these planets, they voluntarily boarded these mysterious Tho'yor ships and committed themselves to an unknown journey, trusting the Force to reveal their destiny. After collecting individuals from a wide variety of planets and species, the 8 Tho'yor brought them to Tython, located in the galactic core, where hyperspace travel was difficult. Orbiting around the 9th and largest Tho'yor, the ships eventually descended onto the planet, each landing in a different region where their passengers disembarked. Though Tython was beautiful, the mixed species Tythons soon learned it was also extremely dangerous, so steeped in Force energy that the overall environment shifted according to the sensitivity of its population. In other words, if the Force-sensitive peoples now living on Tython swayed too far to the light or dark sides, the entire planet reacted to the shift, causing beast attacks and natural disasters. Concluding that balance was the key to peace and stability on the planet, the Tythons were convinced this understanding was the reason they were brought to this world, and so founded the Jedi Order, a name taken from the Dai Bendu language meaning Mystic Center. Further enforcing this idea, Tython was orbited by Ashla, a moon of light, and Bogon, a moon of darkness, assigning those same names to the two opposing sides within the Force. Building temples and cities around the Tho'yor ships, the Jedi Order established a strict hierarchy, with Force-sensitive children classified as younglings before moving up to Padawans, who were sent to train in an academy. After graduating this rank, they became journeyers, sent to study at each of the 9 Tho'yor temples, then graduating to independent rangers, followed by wise masters, and finally reached the highest level as temple masters. Though they experimented with many aspects of the Force, including alchemy to create new life forms, the Jedi were primarily dedicated to achieving balance in the Force, going so far as to exile those who would not comply. Any who fell too far to the light side were sent to the moon Ashla to contemplate the dark side, only able to return when balance was restored. Those who strayed into the dark side did the same, but in the other direction, sent to the moon Bogon to meditate on the light side. As the years went by, the Jedi of Tython had children and descendants, many of whom were not Force-sensitive and struggled to survive on this dangerous planet. Over 1,000 years after first arriving, the city of Arum was destroyed in a terrible natural disaster, resulting in the evacuation of everyone without Force sensitivity, sending them to populate nearby planets and moons. Tython remained a world for the Jedi, who acted as a police and defense force for the system, and replenished their ranks by taking Force-sensitive children into the Order for training. For thousands of years, there was relative peace in the system, but the separation of Force-sensitives from the rest of society led many to grow estranged from the Order, resenting their inherent authority. Exploiting these sentiments, the famous Queen Hadia rose in rebellion, uniting the 9 houses of Shikakwa under her rule. Launching the Despot War, Hadia used her martial prowess and persuasive rhetoric to recruit a great army, which she turned against her hated enemies in the Jedi Order. Seeking to ensure her conquest, Hadia invaded Tython, slaying many Jedi in battle, but in the end, her forces were no match for the highly trained Force warriors. On the verge of defeat, the Queen was determined to die fighting, yet was ultimately defeated through betrayal at the hands of her lover Dagon Locke, who feigned defection from the Jedi Order. Planning to assassinate her while she slept, Locke hesitated at the last moment after growing attached to the beautiful Queen, giving her time to wake up and realize what was happening. After a brief fight, Dagon Locke killed Hadia and slaughtered his way out of the camp. Without her leadership, the Despot army was easily defeated and the war won, leaving Dagon Locke to be hailed as a hero, a title he thoroughly embraced. With the fighting finished, Dagon sought to further his legacy by being the first to reach the depths of a great force chasm on Tython. Others went mad when they ventured too far down, but Locke was convinced he could do it, and so made the attempt with his friend Hawk Ryo. Although they failed to reach the bottom, they both received a powerful force vision, in which Dagon led allied forces against an invading army wielding weapons of frozen fire. Driven half-mad by what he saw, Dagon lost all balance and fell to the dark side, believing it was the only way they would stand a chance in the coming war. Yet the Jedi Council, composed of the wisest masters of the Order, did not believe his warning and were instead convinced the chasm drove him mad like all the others. Though Hawk Ryo was less adamant about the significance of the vision, he too was greatly affected and embraced the dark side. Following their traditions, both men were exiled to the moon Bogan to contemplate the light side, with Hawk eventually restoring his balance and returning to Tython. But Dagon refused to deny what he saw, believing he was destined to lead the defense of the system, and so delved further into the dark side while seeking a way to escape imprisonment and gain control over the Jedi Order. 12 years later, his vision came true when the ruthless Rakatan species of the Infinite Empire detected the force-rich world of Tython and began a campaign of conquest. Due to the volatile hyperspace lanes in the core, finding the exact location of Tython was nearly impossible, and so the Rakatans sent their slave Zesh, a highly skilled force hound, to lead the way. Trained all his life as a dark side force tracker and enforcer, the brutal training of the Rakatans left hounds machine-like in their obedience, utterly brainwashed into believing the will of their master was the only thing that mattered. Considered by some as the best hound in the Empire, Zesh served the ambitious Praetor tul'kar until usurped by his superior and rival Praetor Skal'nas. Implanting memory blockers into Zesh, Skal'nas prevented him from remembering the past so he could focus exclusively on his new mission of infiltrating the Jedi Order to learn all he could before betraying them to ensure Rakatan victory. Yet Zesh himself did not consciously know or understand the plan, and so genuinely believed he was making his own choices throughout the events that followed. Zesh began his secret infiltration mission by sabotaging a Rakatan scouting ship so it crash-landed on Tython, betraying his master tul'kar and killing everyone on board. Fleeing on an escape ship, Zesh survived alone and confused, unable to fully remember what just occurred. The crash made the entire planet aware of their presence, as the dark side energy emitted from Zesh and all those who died caused Tython to become unbalanced, bringing about terrible force storms and beast attacks. Though all the Jedi felt this shift, 3 young journeyers, Shekoda, sek'nos, and Tasha Ryo were most greatly impacted, as they experienced a shared vision of Zesh in response to his force scan of the planet. Greatly affected by this vision, the 3 were drawn to where the crash would occur, and so were the first to find Zesh, who by instinct reacted with aggression, using his force saber to attack and nearly defeat all 3 opponents. Fortunately for the Jedi, they were able to take away his weapon and fight to a stalemate, leaving a wounded Zesh to flee while the others were distracted. Having never seen a force saber, Shekoda was the first to learn it could only be activated by channeling the dark side. Unable to get far while injured, Zesh was overpowered by a local beast until rescued by the pursuing Jedi. Though the dark side acolyte initially fled after recovering his force saber, he felt a powerful connection to Shekoda and so returned to help them defeat the beast. Seeing this as proof Zesh had the potential to change, the 3 journeyers spoke on his behalf, insisting he must be taught about the light side and balance, but ultimately failed to persuade the Jedi Council, who sentenced him to exile on Bogan. Yet his arrival on the dark side moon was no surprise to Dagon Locke, who, like the 3 journeyers, saw a vision of Zesh, but unlike the others, understood it meant the invasion he foresaw had finally come. Still adamant in his embrace of the dark side, Dagon saw Zesh as a younger brother or apprentice in the Force, but soon learned the former hound possessed superior skills in many ways. Nevertheless, the 2 began a partnership which allowed them to repair a broken ship, escape the moon, and launch a campaign to conquer Tython, so Dagon Locke could take leadership of the Jedi and prepare for the coming war. Unable to get far, they were soon captured by the Jedi, who once again sent Dagon into exile, while Zesh was at last given the chance to learn about the light side on Tython. Through his connection to Shekoda, Zesh eventually found balance, and so joined in the defense of the system when the Rakatan fleet finally attacked. Realizing they needed to embrace violence and aggression to win the war, the Jedi Order started making their own force sabers, allowing their warriors to stray further into the dark side while fighting. As foreseen, they even released Dagon Locke from captivity so he could serve as a leading general, leaving many to believe him vindicated and restoring his reputation as a hero. Though the fighting was vicious, with the Infinite Empire able to conquer the world's Skagora, they were defeated at Tython and Shikakwa, making their victory far from certain. Fortunately for Praetor Skal'nas, he had a secret weapon ready to deploy, and so sent his force hound Trill to find and activate his sleeper agent. Starting a relationship with sek'nos and fighting by their side in the war, Trill infiltrated the Jedi Order and captured Zesh so Skal'nas could remove his memory blockers. Horrified to learn he was acting as an agent of the Empire all along, Zesh believed the Jedi would never forgive his betrayal. Feeling so utterly defeated, he willingly returned to the service of his master. Preparing for a final assault on Tython, Skal'nas performed a ritual by drawing on the energy of his hounds to send a dark side pulse so powerful it blinded all Jedi seers on Tython and blocked their connection to the Force. Despite this setback, the Jedi fought on however possible, with sek'nos embracing the dark side to escape captivity as a slave and defeat his former lover Trill, only to once again embrace balance by ultimately sparing her life. On the verge of defeat, the Jedi Order finally found the key to victory in an ancient holocron left behind by Anung of the Kwa, a species which thrived as a galactic power over 100,000 years before the Battle of Yavin. Using infinity gates for instant interstellar travel, the Kwa contacted many worlds, offering friendship and technology, eventually reaching Rakata Prime, homeworld of the Rakatans, who abused their generosity by using this new tech and the infinity gates to conquer other worlds. Dedicated entirely to the dark side of the Force, the Rakatans were ruthless and ambitious, known to cook and eat the flesh of their enemies. Although the Kwa resisted their aggression, they did not have the strength to stop them entirely, and so focused on destroying the Infinity Gates to at least slow down their galactic conquest. Thanks to the holocron, the Jedi learned that Skal'nas wanted to conquer Tython because he knew about a long-abandoned Infinity Gate hidden in the Great Chasm where Dagon saw his vision. Making it clear the Empire could not be allowed to possess the gate, the holocron revealed the key to defeating the invasion lay in the Tho'yor ships scattered throughout their world. Unfortunately, to activate their defense system, a Jedi had to sacrifice themselves, and so the former journeyer, now blinded seer Tasha Ryo, volunteered, using the force energy of her body to activate the Tho'yor, allowing them to rise from the planet's surface and unleash a flurry of fire, destroying the Rakatan fleet and ending the invasion. Meanwhile, Skal'nas and Zesh made their way to the Infinity Gate and were on the verge of seizing it when they were found by Shae and Dagon Locke. Though Zesh thought he was beyond redemption, the love of Shae brought him back towards balance in the Force, and so he betrayed and killed his master Skal'nas. With the war won, Zesh joined the Jedi Order, and with the help of Shae continued to study the concept of balance. But much of the rest of the Order was no longer convinced this was the best or most effective way to understand the Force. A schism then formed, with some following Dagon Locke in the belief that the dark side was the only way to defend themselves from future enemies, while others reacted in the opposite way, sickened by the dark side nature of violence, and therefore dedicated themselves to peace within the light side. Tensions eventually erupted into battle, resulting in the decade-long Force Wars, where light side forces ultimately emerged victorious, leaving the remaining dark side followers defeated and scattered. Adjusting their concept of what it meant to achieve balance, the remaining Force users reorganized themselves into the light side Jedi Order before departing from Tython to seek a new homeworld, eventually settling on Ossus. A special thanks to all those who contribute to Civilization X, like Sir Xavier, Defender of the Flame, Delacruz the Freed, Lady J Book Nerd, and Honir the Dead Raven. If you'd like to help the channel, please go to patreon.com/civilizationx, where you can get early access to videos, vote on future content, and access the Patreon-only series, Heroes of Lore and Legend.